the higher the price point, the more interaction you typically have with the customers, and then also you can sort of anticipate that by just having a ton of like contact options.
I think for most furniture businesses, what they are used to is dealing with foot traffic. So they have a brick and mortar and people pass by and they see the sign, they walk in. And
Having a optimized e-commerce store is also just going to help for your local business, even honestly, because like people.
that the inventory and product listing piece of this is challenging.
A few years ago, it was like a ton of work for sure. It was like very hard, especially because with e-commerce.
Welcome to another episode of the Couch Pod. Today I'm joined by Lars from Howard Consulting. Lars used to run a furniture business himself, having sold over $9 million worth of furniture online, and today has worked with over 40 furniture brands in just this year alone. So a wealth of experience in the furniture world, but combined with expertise in online marketing. So very lucky to have him on the pod today. Lars, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me.
It's been a little bit since we last talked. What have you been up to in the past year?
Yeah, I appreciate that question, man. So definitely been working with a lot of different furniture companies, just making them really sell very well through e-commerce. Just sort of sometimes even transitioning from just doing like physical sales onto e-commerce. And yeah, basically been developing all of our methods and strategies, really refining them to just make them as effective as possible, basically, to just sell a ton of furniture through e-commerce. That's yeah, basically what I do.
What does your standard client or retainer look like today? Like when you think about your average customer that is a furniture store, a furniture retailer, what does their business look like? Like how big are they and what kinds of products are they selling? Like how are they selling it? Tell me a little bit about your average customer.
Yeah, for sure. So, well, honestly, it's pretty wide range. Like some people are selling quite cheap furniture. They're selling more like the IKEA type price points, like just dining tables for like $500 or something, like maybe $1,000. And also clients that sell more like high end, like the sofas for like 4 or 5 thousand, for example. Also in between, just sort of the middle segment, just a sofa for like 2 grand, for example. So it's of course different approaches for different segments and how you market it, who you're targeting, of course. But yeah, I would say it's pretty all round. Every sort of sub niche of furniture I've.
Cool. So yeah, it's not like one specific type of furniture business. It's really all up and down the spectrum. In that case, how would you describe the difference in strategies that are most effective for the different niches? So if you're selling like flat pack, IKEA kind of price point furniture, what tends to work best for you versus, someone that's doing high end stuff?
Yeah, for sure. That's an amazing question. So, yeah, when it comes to the different price points, basically the higher the price, the more sort of we see that lead nurturing is also very important. So, like the higher priced items you want to sell, the more sort of contact options you should have on your website, for example, and the more hands-on you should be, the more follow-ups you should make with people in order to make them buy. Because if they need to put down like for a sofa like $500 versus like $3,000, then you'll definitely have a bit more work to do when it comes to like gaining the trust from that person that needs to put down $3,000. Like generally, you have to speak with them either through live chat, through a phone call, or text messages, like stuff like that. That's just still with the lower segment furniture. It's still just very important to still be hands on and assist people in sort of that buying journey, even through e-commerce. Like most people think e-commerce is just people press on add to cart, they go to the checkout and they pay. Of course that happens, but especially with sort of high ticket stuff like furniture, you're just gonna make a lot more sales if you also have a lot of contact options on your website, and then that way you can basically guide them through the buying journey that way, sort of like in a physical store setting, but then you're doing it online, of course. So, and I would say, like I said, the higher the price point, the more that becomes important. Like we have some clients that I've worked with, they do like 80-90% of all their e-commerce sales over the phone. So it's all coming from their e-commerce store, but they're basically closing them over the phone because their average ticket is like $3,000, right?
Interesting. And so, depending on the price point of the item is more expensive. Your e-commerce store is less likely to be true e-commerce in that there is virtually no interaction with the customer to close the sale. Like they're just self-servicing, adding to cart, and then just checking out on their own. But as you creep up in price point, customers expect a higher degree of hand-holding and customer service in order to get the deal done.
Exactly. Yeah, it still happens, of course. Like we have clients, they still make like $5,000 orders just directly through their website, and they just see the Shopify notification, and that was it. Yeah, definitely the higher the price point, the more interaction you typically have with the customers, and then also you can sort of anticipate that by just having a ton of like contact options throughout your whole website. So you make it even easier for people to contact you because you know that when they contact you, like those leads are just really valuable for you, right? So yeah, that's sort of how you can take your advantage of that, because not many people are focused on that. They just want to have people buy straight through their website. So if you are the opposite, then it's going to make a lot more sales, basically.
I think for most furniture businesses, what they are used to is dealing with foot traffic. So they have a brick and mortar and people pass by and they see the sign, they walk in. And maybe they even run some ads that are sort of like lead forms, like, come visit our showroom, book an appointment with us. But it's not based on transacting online, but getting people to come in person. And my guess is that like when people come to work with you, they're trying to figure out the online piece. Like how can I do more transactions without actually seeing this person face to face? Is that right?
Yeah, for sure. When we start to work with a furniture store or furniture brand, like we always have like a full CRM system that we have basically pre-installed for them. So then they can just hook that up to their website and put all these different contact options, all these widgets in place. And that way, basically, the website sort of becomes the physical store, it becomes sort of the showroom. So people just have a look throughout the whole website. And once they see a piece that they really want, they might have like a last few questions, they might have some like a last objection, and they call you up or they leave a callback request, and then that way the client is able to call them or text with them to just sort of get them closed. So yeah, basically that's what the buying process typically looks like. So yeah, there's no involvement of their physical stores typically.
I've been running my business for 30 years. I've been doing business this one way, like I'm relying on brick and mortar, foot traffic, face-to-face showings. What would you say to me to convince me to try something new and convert to more of an online-based selling strategy?
Yeah, I mean, if you've been selling for like 30 years in your local area, depends on the area, but typically you've sort of reached the people you wanted to reach by that point. With e-commerce, you can just like it works the best if you do it nationwide, basically. So, of course, different challenges come with that, like logistics. That's what we also help our clients with if they need help with that. So, basically, just way more scale and way less overhead as well. Like you just need your Shopify store, which is like $30 a month. Of course, you got to make it optimized and everything, but once it's working, it's just crazy scalable. You don't need to receive people, you don't need staff on the floor, you don't need to rent a building, anything like that. Just need the product, of course, to ship it to those customers. But even that, maybe you can even drop ship it from your supplier, depending on what you're selling. And yeah, that way it's just a whole other avenue that you can get into that's not dependent on your local area, of course.
So it's the opportunity to expand into new markets is the predominant salient feature here.
Yeah, I would say so. Yes, and also actually like having a optimized e-commerce store is also just going to help for your local business, even honestly, because like people that still like they might drive past your store, they might look you up online. If you don't have a website or your website is really not optimized for sales, then it's very unlikely they would buy from online. But if they drive past your store, they Google you, and your website is just really solid, then they might still sort of turn into an e-commerce customer that way. They might still land in your funnel. They might contact you. They might just buy directly through your website. So, like, first of all, having that website piece in place is just regardless of if you're selling locally or nationally will always be viable. And yeah, for e-com, you can just skate it out to all the states. Basically, you just gotta get your logistics right, of course, but that's very doable for the United States.
And I imagine that for a lot of people who are doing this for the first time, making that transition, that the inventory and product listing piece of this is challenging, right? So if you're used to just taking, getting your trailer shipped to you and then laying everything out on your showroom floor and putting a sticker on it, that there's this learning curve to getting those products photographed and then listed on your website. So how do you help your clients navigate that transition?
That's a good point. So a few years ago, it was like a ton of work for sure. It was like very hard, especially because with e-commerce, product imagery and videos is just important because they cannot just come out and see it in real life, of course. So a couple of years ago, to get like really nice lifestyle images and everything was just really hard. But now there's many different AI tools for generating images and videos for your furniture, and it just looks like amazing, honestly. And that way, like you are able to directly compete with like Wayfair or like whoever is your direct competitor, right? Like Ashley, like I don't know, any sort of big brand, they might still use like actual settings and that way create their imagery. But many of them nowadays are also just using AI. So you're just playing on like the same level, basically playing in the same field. So that way you still got to make pictures, of course, of all your different items. That's definitely work. There's no way going around that. But making it very competitive with the other ones, other stores in the market, that's very doable nowadays. But yeah, you definitely have to put some time in, of course. But that's, I think, with building any proper business.
And so, like, typically when you're working with a client, have they already tried to do e-commerce on their own and they've kind of been struggling and failed at it? Now they're looking for help, or is it someone that like is interested in getting into it for the first time and then you're like there to hold their hand, or like what's, typically what you're seeing?
Yeah, I would say it's a bit of both. So definitely a lot of people try already themselves, but typically they just put up like a very sort of simple Shopify theme, Shopify store. And of course, if you're running a physical furniture store normally, then you're just not gonna really know what to put in place, right? Like the different elements, like how to optimize your imagery, like we just talked about, all that stuff. Like ton goes into it. So then we just help with optimizing it further from there. For sure, that's often the case. So they might already be making some sales, but not anything very predictable. And yeah, sometimes they're just selling very well through like Facebook Marketplace, for example. I think one of your viewers also came to us like a while ago. We helped them actually just completely from scratch launch their e-commerce side of the business. So they were doing very well with Facebook Marketplace, but they were like, oh, I don't want to just rely on Facebook Marketplace. We want to have an additional channel. So then we just had to start basically from scratch with them with really new Shopify store and just getting that up and running, getting them to shoot all their pictures and everything. They already did do it for Facebook Marketplace, but that's a bit different, of course, than for like an e-com store. So yeah, it's definitely both, and both is definitely workable as long as you just like put the right things in place, right? Have a good website, your imagery, your videos, which can be done with AI, and then just yeah, you have to start advertising it basically.
That's interesting. So, what would you say is the difference between photography for a listing on Facebook Marketplace and content for your website?
Yeah, for sure. So for Facebook Marketplace, it's typically a bit less professional, I would say. Still, you gotta make it look good, of course, like make it look appealing. But people on Facebook Marketplace are not expecting like to buy from like a huge company. That's not why they're on Facebook Marketplace. They're more looking for like a steal from like a local guy who just has a couple like really nice sofas in stock. And with an e-com store, then you're just really competing with like the real big companies, right? So then you got to sort of present yourself as well to be one of those guys. That's like very not necessarily like as big as those guys, but still as trustworthy and as professional as those other guys. So if you just put like those pretty simple images, maybe taken like this format, like vertically, not horizontally, and just sort of not crazy professional, not like that, and then also no lifestyle images, which you should definitely do for e-commerce, then it's just not gonna work as well because you're competing with other guys, other companies who are putting in that work to just make it look like basically just make it look top notch, and that's sort of the difference that we've definitely seen between those platforms. That typically the Facebook Marketplace pictures, like putting those on your website, is generally not going to work crazy well.
Interesting. So already we've talked about a couple different performance areas to get ready for e-commerce. So staging, photography, getting your inventory just up to date and current, being able to provide adequate customer service for people who are interested in checking out. So if like there are leads coming in through the website, you need to prepare to handle those leads. So for someone who's like, and obviously creating content and advertising to say the least. So for someone who's like thinking about getting into this, like, how would you set their expectations in terms of the overall time, effort, and resources necessary to execute this correctly?
Depends, of course, like where you're at. Like if you're already making some sales through your e-commerce store directly, then you've done a lot of the heavy lifting already, I would say. Then something is already working. If you're not selling anything e-commerce yet, maybe you don't even have a website yet, but you are selling physically, then basically you know the products that you're selling and like the price point you're selling them at, and like there's demands for them, and now you gotta get that sort of transition over to e-com. Then I would say like it can definitely take a few months. If you're already selling well online, then in the first 1 to 2 months you can definitely expect like a good extra increase in e-com sales. But if you're just really starting from scratch, you're just starting sort of a new business from scratch, I would say. So then I would more calculate like 3, 4 months, maybe 2 months if you work very hard. But then you definitely gotta build that from the ground up. And in terms of money, it's actually nothing crazy. Like your Shopify is like 30, 40 bucks a month. You might have to buy a premium theme, then that's few $100, like 300, 400 typically. Other than that, you should have already like furniture in place, so that shouldn't be any extra expenses. Maybe some basic coding could be like a few $100, but you can do that overseas, and that shouldn't be too much. And then your marketing. But actually, if you start with advertising, then on for example Google Ads, you can get a coupon code, and then you can get advertising budget for free. So let's say like you can oftentimes get a coupon for like $500 for free after you spend $500. So in total you've got $1,000 to spend, and you only pay $500 basically. And from that initial $1,000, you should already get like solid sales in. So in total, in terms of the operational costs to get it started, like what I just mentioned, it's maybe $2,000 in total. But yeah, definitely quite some time. Like also getting all your products on your Shopify store, that definitely takes time typically for clients. Getting an AI imagery in place, like that. And yeah, then when leads come through, of course you gotta nurture them, you gotta chat with them, call them, text them, like that way just get them closed. I wouldn't say it's customer service. I would say it's like pretty like sales that you gotta do for that. Maybe you gotta learn that a bit, which can definitely be done, of course. That might take some time as well. So that's why I say like if you are not really selling well yet online, it will definitely take you a couple months to just get to a solid level in sales. You can make your first sales probably in the first month, but then like to really get to couple tens of thousands a month, yeah, you should calculate 2, 3, 4 months, I would say, on average.
Oh, that's really interesting. And Lars, I think surface level, when I think about your business, I might consider you to be a marketing guy, right? You're going to come in, you're going to run my ads. But as we've talked, what I've realized is you're really offering something much more comprehensive, like the full package, right? It's like almost, how do you transform a furniture business into an online retailer? And there are many different components of this. Like you have to think through the inventory, the logistics, the marketing, the sales, etc. And it seems like you're willing and able to meet your customers where they're at, meet your clients where they're at, in order to get them to that next level.
Yeah, no, that's very accurate, I would say. Yeah, if you're just going to implement marketing, then like you might be lucky and the rest might already be in place and it's gonna work, but typically it's not. So then you just kind of waste ad budget basically. So that's what I would never recommend. Basically, in us working with a furniture store, that's sort of the last step almost to start advertising. Like you want to have your website and your lead nurturing with like a software. You want to have all that in place, your logistics as well, like before you start any ads, because then you're actually gonna spend money, of course. So you gotta make sure that it's gonna be worth it, of course. So yeah, like that's sort of what you gotta do, right? To just make sure it works, you gotta go like A to Z, or like if one of those things in between is not present, or it's not up to the level it needs to be, then just gonna not make the amount of sales that you want to make, of course.
That being said, let's dig into the marketing component of this. So, what sort of campaigns do you see working well for your clients lately? Like, how are you getting people interested in checking out their store and then ultimately buying things from them?
Yeah, for sure. So it's already been the same like since I basically started to sell furniture online. I would say it's been Google Shopping ads and Meta ads. So for Meta ads, it's all different types like static image ads, video ads, catalog ads. Yeah, basically those two channels. So for Google ads, really only Google Shopping I would really recommend, and then the Instagram and Facebook ads. So with the shopping ads, you really gotta be hyper targeted on the search terms. So you gotta basically make sure that people who are looking for your exact type of furniture that you're selling, that those guys are landing on your website. That's generally very qualified traffic that you'll be able to convert a percentage of. And with Facebook and Instagram, it's really just testing out like a ton of creatives, like test out different static image ads of different bestseller furniture pieces that you're already selling well. Videos, same thing for bestsellers, I would recommend. And then you can also run catalog ads for, I would do again like a collection of your bestsellers, or for example, a collection of like dining furniture. You can run that to interest like specifically for dining furniture. Same for like sofas, we're selling a ton of sofas. That way you just pump out a ton of creatives that way for meta ads, and just analyze the data. I would say even on a daily basis, checking which creatives get the most ad cards, initiate checkouts, and purchases, of course. So just those two channels. Like I've definitely had many questions like, oh, can we also start running TikTok ads? It's just not needed, honestly, and it's never gonna perform better than the Meta ads and Google ads, because they're machine learning, they're sort of AI, like how they, like the amount of data that Meta has and Google about their users is just unmatched. And TikTok's always going to have a lower return on ad spend than those two platforms. So you only need those two.
Yeah, might as well scale out to the extent that you can on those two platforms. There's plenty of ROI to be had there.
Exactly. Like everyone nowadays is either on Facebook or Instagram, I think, and almost everyone is using Google as well. So you're not missing out on anyone essentially by not being on TikTok or Pinterest or like whatever, like X. Maybe Bing. Bing is fine. Once your Google ads are working, you can just duplicate them. You can copy them over to Bing, and that's definitely very good as well. But it's just way less volume, of course, than Google. It's just a small version of Google, so that's sort of a thing you can expand into after you make Google Ads work. But other than that, just yeah, stick to those two platforms for ecom.
So, why not Google search?
Scene with furniture, it's a very visual product, right? You can make it work, but it's generally just a lower return on ad spend than shopping, because with shopping you first of all see the image of the furniture piece, and you see it right there in Google. So then you have that, and then you also see the price right away and the title. So when somebody presses on your shopping ad, they know what it looks like, they know the price, and they know like a little description about the product. While if you do a search ad, then you can only describe things, right? Like there might at this point be like an image extension, but it's like the shopping ads is honestly just unmatched. So it's always the lowest hanging fruit. So let's say you're spending like a couple thousand a day on shopping ads and they're performing really well. You can also just test like targeting those best performing search terms with shopping. You can test targeting those with Google search ads and see if there's still a good ROAS you can get from those terms, like with search ads. But typically even that is like a lower ROAS in my experience. I've honestly never really seen a search campaign perform better than a shopping campaign. So you might as well just focus on shopping ads. So that's what we always focus on basically.
So how do you optimize a shopping campaign for furniture? Like my understanding is that like it's serving basically based on the title and the description of the listing, and then whatever keywords are in the title and description it may potentially serve for.
Yeah, for sure. That's indeed true. You cannot specifically target certain search terms, but what you can do is you can exclude search terms. So that's basically the way to target search terms, is to just by throwing out all the irrelevant search terms. So in the beginning, you're definitely going to get a lot of irrelevant search terms, and you just gotta toss all these out in the beginning. You should actually just monitor it on a daily basis and exclude them as broadly as possible to make them just never come back again, essentially. So let's say cheap corner sofa you get as a search term in your shopping app, but let's say you're not selling corner sofas at all, then you just want to broad exclude the word corner. So you're never going to show up for anything on Google anymore that contains the word corner in the search term. So you're not going to show up for corner sofas anymore, essentially. And that's just in the beginning quite time consuming, but at some point you'll have a list of like a couple thousand negative keywords, they call them. So basically keywords that you're not gonna show up for anymore, and then you'll see that like the amount of like relevant search terms is just increasing percent in terms of percentages, and the amount of junk that's coming through just decreases. And that way, yeah, you're just only showing up pretty much for relevant search terms, and then like none of your competitors are putting in their work. So that's basically the way you can beat them. So some people find it annoying you can't target search terms with shopping ads. I think it's pretty nice because otherwise competition would just be way fiercer as well on those terms, right? Because it would be way simpler to target them.
Makes sense. So targeting through exclusion.
Yeah, exactly. That's the way it is with shopping ads. Yeah.
Now, what are typical ROAS ranges that you're seeing for Google shopping ads for your clients?
So it definitely depends on like a store by store case. Generally, I see sort of the higher ticket the product is, the higher the ROAS also is. If you're selling quite high ticket, I see ROAS as typically between like 12 to 20, 10 to 20, something like that. If you're selling a bit more lower ticket products, maybe average order value of like 200-300 bucks or something, then should be more looking at like 6 to 10 rows, I would say, maybe five, something like that. Because let's say on average, like my own brand, the Nancy Homesel brand, the average order value was like 140, no, like 160 bucks, around that number, and we were typically having like a 6-7 ROAS because you're just making less revenue per customer, right? And the ad price is not that different compared to if you're selling very high ticket stuff. So, but yeah, if your average order value is $1, 2, 3, $4,000, then you can definitely get into like a 10-20 return on ad spend. That's very doable.
Would the conclusion of that be that furniture retailers should try to move into higher ticket items?
Yeah, I would say like you can still make it work. It just depends on your margins. Like if you're fine with like a 6 ROAS, then because you're just not paying a whole lot for the furniture in the first place, then you can scale the hell out of that as well, right? We did like $9 million in sales with like a 6-7 ROAS, so it was still worth it. So it just depends on sort of your preference, I guess. But yeah, nowadays I personally like to have a bit more higher end furniture to sell. So if I were to start a web shop nowadays, I would definitely go with more expensive products. You've got like less customers to deal with. It's just a bit more sort of chill. You got less volume, and still you're making good money. But both can be done because both sort of segments have demand for them, right? So I wouldn't say one or the other is better, is gonna make you more money. You just gotta have good products, have a good funnel, like we discussed, and then you can make both work very well.
And what are you seeing on the Facebook ad side? So you mentioned a couple different kinds of campaigns, requirement to generate a lot of creative and do a lot of testing. Do you feel like the juice is worth the squeeze on Facebook compared to Google Shopping? Because Google Shopping obviously is gonna be a lot simpler.
Yeah, I mean, Facebook, once you've got it working also, it's really simple. Like managing those campaigns, just getting them up is really not a lot of work. The work is in the beginning, of course, to find those winning ad creatives. Yeah, when it comes to the returns, like Facebook and Google Shopping, I would say are pretty similar. Like same sort of for a high ticket. What I see is like 10 to 20. For a bit lower ticket, it's typically between 5 to 10. So in terms of profitability, it's definitely worth it. In terms of the work, it will be a bit more work than Google Ads typically. Yes, so I typically recommend to start with Google Shopping, and then you build up some data, some conversion data on your website. You're sort of seasoning your pixel that way, and then you get into meta ads as well. So you can retarget people that find you from Google. You can retarget them on Facebook and Instagram, and then also you can get into cold targeting, right? Just creating lookalikes from your past customers, and that way just scale even more. But yeah, it'll be a bit more work than Google typically. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Now, what are you doing for audience targeting? Like you mentioned remarketing, people who have been to your website, etc. Are you putting a lot of emphasis on things like demographics and interests and things like that when you're selecting the ad audiences, or do you kind of just let the machine learning figure out who to serve the ads to?
Great question. So, when it comes to targeting, if you've already done a lot of Google ads, then you basically have the data already. You don't need to experiment a whole lot anymore because you already know who your customers are. You can just put your file of customers, you can just make an export from your Shopify customers, put them into Facebook, and you can just create a lookalike out of those. But yeah, if you're not having that luxury yet, you don't have like a big client list that you can put into it, then yeah, I would definitely target like specific interests that are related to your specific products, right? Maybe competitors, maybe brands that you're reselling. If you're selling Ashley, you can just target Ashley interest. You can layer it, for example, with engaged shoppers. And if you still have some sort of logistical constraints, then you can also put the targeting on only certain states, of course. That also tends to still work well, as long as the audience is still big enough. So you should still have at least a couple million people in your audience to make a Facebook ad work well. I would say at least like 3 million, but ideally it's even more than that. We've got some stores that just target like 200 million people at this point, and Facebook just knows like the customers, so they're able to just pinpoint like, oh yeah, you need to see this ad and you're probably going to buy. Eventually you'll be targeting very broadly, but in the beginning, yeah, you gotta get a bit more specific if you don't have the data yet, right?
So let's segue into lead nurturing. So we've talked about how to get the people to your website via the advertising channels, but once they're on the website, how do we make the most use of our ad spend, make sure that we're not wasting dollars, that if someone is interested, that they're getting the information they need and we can lead them to a conversion?
Yeah, when it comes to lead nurturing, it's crucial in order to just sell a lot of furniture online, because like it's still a product that people sort of want to be handheld with oftentimes. So like I said, we have some clients that sell very high ticket that have like 90% of all their sales come through phone calls. And I would say in terms of like how to close them, it's pretty similar like in a physical store. You really gotta first be sort of like a doctor that just listens to what they need, what are they looking for, diagnosing basically in terms of the furniture that you would sort of prescribe them. And then you're of course going to prescribe them the furniture. You'll give them certain options. You can text them or email them the pictures of it if they want to get a better feel for it. It's typically not a close like you're going to close it right there on the phone call. You might as well, like that definitely happens, but also oftentimes it does happen that you still gotta email or text them some options. They would discuss it with their wife or husband or anyone in the house, and then that way you just gotta sort of play the nurturing game that way, keep following up with them, and yeah, eventually you'll close them. So that's for like incoming leads. Now what you can also do is if somebody already added to cart, went to the checkout, and left all their contact details and didn't end up buying, then you can just call up that person and basically also get them still closed. Like that's something almost nobody is doing, but they're very qualified leads because they almost made that purchase already. Like they filled in all their details. So just calling those guys up. If you already have abandoned checkouts come through on your website and you're not doing that yet, then that's just guaranteed going to make you extra money, right? It's just free sales basically sitting there in your Shopify. And then you gotta just take a bit different approach, of course, because they didn't ask for you to call them. But then you can be more like a bit more in like an urgency way, saying, for example, like, oh, like just wanted to call you up because I saw you almost bought our corner sofa, and actually until tomorrow we've got our Black Friday sale going on, so I thought I would give you a quick call to make sure you're not missing out. Something like that tends to work really well, and sometimes they might want like a bit extra discount, so if needed, just give it to them, and yeah, you'll be able to close a lot more sales that way as well.
Okay, amazing. Well, Lars, I know we're at our time together here, but really insightful conversation today. Thank you so much for hopping on the pod, sharing your knowledge with us, and I look forward to having you on a future episode as well.
Thank you so much, Charles. It was a pleasure as always.